Mm. Hi there, I'm Dani, spiritualtherapist.com, and it is time we put our attention on the animals and the animal kingdom. And my guest today is somebody who is known as an animal and a soul whisperer. Not only does she communicate with the animals and the souls, the deep, beautiful souls of the animals, but she also helps so many people and whispers into their souls too. Ginny Jablonski, welcome, Angel.
Thank you, Dani. I'm so excited to be here.
It's so lovely to have you. And, you know, anyone that looks at you, not only are you just a radiating, beautiful frequency of femininity and strength, but the horse is behind you. That is one of the nicest backdrops I've ever seen in my life. And you were sharing, it is actually a specific herd that you've met. Can you share that story, please?
Yes, the horses are from the Little Book Cliffs herd management area in Colorado. And I adopted a horse that was gathered off the range there. I actually have a short story published in a book called Animal Prints on My Soul. And the short story that I published is called Healing Beauty. And Beauty is the horse that I adopted. And her name was Beauty before she came to me. I didn't adopt her, pardon me. I purchased her from the person that adopted her from the BLM.
And the BLM is?
The Bureau of Land Management. They are tasked with managing wild herds of donkeys and horses and have been struggling with the population of the animals. And so they gather them and they adopt them out. And there's a lot of politics and a lot of heartache in that story. So we might not want to touch on that today.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. As you start saying that, the monkeys around me start growling. So, you know, it's so interesting and important that anything that we obviously abbreviate, like the BLM, I'm like, oh, please, can we not go down the road of Black Lives Matter? Because every life matters, including the horses. So, and again, there are people right now, they're looking for mission, they're looking for something to get involved with. And establishments like that is probably something that people could also look at as a way and a means to help, to give love, to keep themselves busy and all of that. So Beauty is part of your animal family on your ranch. Can you tell us where your ranch is, please?
Yes, I'm in central Arizona, just north of Prescott.
Perfect. How do the animals, the horses in particular, how do they maintain staying at a certain cool frequency in the heat? Because it gets so hot. I mean, melting hot in Arizona.
Right. Well, I have an interesting story about that, but animals are able to regulate their temperature fairly well. They have mechanisms to manage the heat and the cold, their hair, their musculature, and their DNA has adapted to their environment. So if they are genetically from a certain area, and the climate is, very cold, then they generally develop their body type and their hair according to those needs. Thoroughbreds, of course, from Europe or from the West Coast or struggle to manage sometimes in the colder climates, but generally horses do very well.
That's so good to know. You know, can you just briefly reflect on huskies? Let's say we've got huskies who have, been raised in Antarctica, let's say, and then they come to they've got the blue eyes, and then they come to, can you hear the monkeys? Oh my gosh, they're going to get louder. But they come to, let's say Arizona. How would they frequent their thermal system?
Right. Over time, they adapt. Those who, are here. I think that owners take great care to, with respect to huskies or Alaskan Malamutes and those types of dogs. They will take great care in the summertime to comb out their undercoat and to help them in that way. Obviously, they don't necessarily do very well during the heat of the day. In terms of their soul, regulating their adaptability, I've not had that conversation, so I wouldn't be able to speak to that.
Uh-huh. So in terms of their soul, in terms of you being able to connect to an animal's soul, can you tell us the very first time that you realized that you truly have this ability?
Oh gosh, well, that was sometime after animals came to me in my second near-death experience and encouraged me not to go to the other side and indicated that I had something important to do. But upon my return, which was very dramatic and painful, I forgot about that for many years until I went on a really interesting healing journey and began working with people in an intuitive way. On my journey working with people, animals started crashing the sessions. Yeah, I'd be working with a man or a woman and I would say, do you own a white cat, or do you have a black horse, or do you have a golden doodle, a dog, and it has wings, so it might be passed away. And sometime after that, it was maybe happening for a month or so, and I meditated and I said, why are these animals real? They're just really bothering me. I'm trying to help people and they keep coming in with all these requests for healing or messages for their owners, and it's distracting me.
Wow.
And the giant horse, who's my primary guide from a horse council, came forward and said, don't you remember? We brought you back from your near-death experience and we guided you on your journey to overcoming trauma. And we would like you to share everything you learned on your journey with respect to healing yourself, forgiving, overcoming trauma, releasing the cellular memory of trauma with animals, and to share with people that animals can be traumatized and that animals are uniquely on a path of evolution as well. Now, not all animals, but some. And we would like you to share with the world that animals can be traumatized too, and that some of what is being shared out there may not reflect the needs of all animals.
Oh my goodness, that just fills my heart with so much gratitude, gratitude. We need to go back a little bit down your timeline. And would you be comfortable sharing your first near-death experience with us?
Well, certainly. I was 3 months old, and I remembered this under a spontaneous, let's call it hypnotic regression, but not an intentional hypnotic regression, but I slipped into that state. And I was 3 months old. I had whooping cough. I was in the hospital, packed in ice in a tent, and I had turned totally blue and it was not looking good.
Oh my God.
And there are many categories, as everyone knows by now, of near-death experiences. And the one that I experienced was going to the void, just floating in the velvety black space. And I just heard a voice. And this, at 3 months old, it was one of my exit clauses written into my incarnation contract, that if I wanted to leave the life, I had an exit ramp, so to speak. And I went home and I said, I can't do this. It's going to be very traumatizing. There's going to be a lot. This is very heavy and I've got a lot of karma coming in with me too. I don't know if I can do both. And I was very upset, and I was told no, that I needed to go and fulfill my purpose and that there was something important I had to do, but I was not told what that was. In hindsight, I mean, it makes perfect sense to me that the important thing I had to do was just heal myself. But I think I lost you again.
Yeah,
Oh,
just a little. That's okay. Hi there. Yeah. So you were saying that coming back, you realized that the one thing you had to do was come back and heal yourself. Is that what you said?
In hindsight, at the time, I didn't I didn't have, because of the veil of forgetfulness, I did not remember what that meant or what.
You also hit on such a massive, interesting, for some people, they're never ever going to have heard about exit clauses or exit strategies or 5 different exit, positions or plans we can have in an incarnation in the human body, how many times we have opportunity to leave. And if we think about our own near-death experiences, like just like stepping in front of a car and it just missing you, or all these different times you've taken a drug or got so drunk or whatever, and you think, God, I could have died, I could have died, I could have died. It's a very similar frequency, but the way you describe it, there is going to bring so much clarity and so much wonder and awe to so many people at this time of absolute need for clarification and validation on this planet. Wow, that's just so beautiful. A little about the black void. Do you remember, as this tiny frozen baby, I'm sorry that you froze to death in that moment and they didn't get it, and but that's what happened. When did you feel yourself leaving the body? And from a 3-month-old consciousness, which obviously, you were fully conscious, as in your whole soul consciousness, what was it? Do you remember any kind of physical experience from that moment to leaving? And then can you tell us more about the void, what it felt like, looked like, and where the voice came from?
I'm sorry, I don't have a lot of that kind of detail. The regressive memory was limited to my saying that I didn't want to do the lifetime, that I didn't feel I was strong enough to do the lifetime. And all I remember, and I can tell you again in hindsight, that I feel the reason I don't remember the oneness and the bliss is because I could not have stayed on earth for the last 55 years if I had felt that oneness and bliss and unconditional love and balance. I don't think I could stay here if I remembered that. So I feel that my experience was perfect for me. What I needed to, let's say, spur me on. I can tell you that the level of consciousness I had or felt in that moment is the same as my near-death experience about 10 years ago in 2012, which is I was just me. When I think about being me as a soul, I feel the same. And I felt the same in the 3-month-old experience as I did when I was, I guess it was about 46 in 2012. So what I experienced, it was just an expansive, infinite, velvety, but not thick, black space. And there was a voice, and to me, it was a male voice. It sounded male, and maybe I just needed, that's my representation of the Father or the Creator in my own consciousness, that it's fatherly. And so the voice was male, but the voice was coming from everywhere around me. And when I say me, I was a consciousness. I existed outside of the body.
Thank you. Thank you. This is so perfect in more ways than we can both of us actually realize. That's what I so feel this. So let's go through from 3-month-old. You come back into your little body, you recover. So can you just take us through a few years until the next experience that your soul is telling you is very important to share in this broadcast?
Well, I went through a couple of decades of neglect and abuse, many different kinds of abuse. And that led me to growing up and escaping my family life in my career and looking for validation outside of me. So I had majored in economics, but I was in the field of international security, and I threw everything in my work. My work was my identity. And I became very ill. I was, 5'2", 105 pounds, working with 6'5", 280, 300-pound Army Rangers, Navy SEALs, Special Forces, type men,
Yummy.
incredible men with incredible careers and experiences. And I pushed my body to run stairs and to lift weights and to do whatever I could do to fit in as a woman in a very masculine, very dominating, very controlling field, which in itself had a bit of trauma attached to it. And my body just basically, after 3 years of training and 3 years in the field, and being in the field means a 90-day commitment, you don't go home, you work 7 days a week, 14, 16 hours a day, plus exercising, plus security briefings, a lot of very challenging, very stressful, difficult situations, not to mention the interpersonal relationships with the male agents, was very difficult. And so I began I was very tired, fatigue easily. My shooting scores were going down, and I had been a competition shooter, a master shooter. I really enjoyed that, finding it hard to grip my weapon.
Wow, Ginny, can I interrupt you? This is absolutely amazing. You're like this ninja, kick-ass, like, whoa. Okay, we've got to go back to the security intel details here, as much as you are able to share. And also, like, when you talk about 6'5", big beefy men, I did say, ooh, yummy, but then I quickly got back on track with you. So darling, and I'm so sorry that your little body was so pushed to the hilt, but who were you security for? Like, what was that role?
Well, the company was Vance International. They're no longer in business. They were owned by the corporation was owned by Charles Vance and Susan Ford, President Gerald Ford's daughter, Susan Ford. And they had 3 divisions: Uniform Division, Executive Protection, and International Security Risk Assessment, Threat Assessment Division. And I worked in the Executive Protection Division. So I worked protecting foreign diplomats on US soil on unofficial state visits, but sometimes alongside the State Department and almost always along the security forces for the foreign governments that I worked for. And primarily it was Saudi Arabia, primarily.
Do you have any particularly interesting stories that you can share with us? Because it's such an intriguing, very private industry, and it's like a little peekaboo into that, only if you can, though.
Well, it was a lot of standby to standby, I have to say, watching other people live a very lavish lifestyle, and it certainly didn't improve the quality of my life. It was fascinating. I traveled, I lived at the Ritz, I lived at the Four Seasons. I traveled on private planes, but my life was not my own. In terms of, again, I feel like I might, with every question, I feel like I might disappoint you with my answers.
Oh my God, darling, please don't think that at all, please.
The stories I might have maybe border on the absurd.
Good, excellent. We love it. We love that.
Well, I mean, like something that stands out in my mind. One of the families had taken their children and friends to the Beverly Hills Gun Club, which is it's not in Beverly Hills, it's in Santa Monica, California. And they were getting ready, choosing their weapons to shoot. And one of the children, a 14-year-old girl who was a princess, she picked up a gun from the counter and turned and held it to someone's head and pulled the trigger right in front of me.
Oh my God.
Wow. So this really speaks to the lack of parenting in some of these in some of these Eastern cultures, where they don't raise their children really with morals or boundaries. And I did actually hear many stories about that. And I have a few on this vein, because I only protected women, not men. And I often, at least half the time, protected children. So this young girl did this. And I had been warned and told of stories where agents tried to correct these young children on details and they would be fired. For example, we're not allowed to touch them, etc. So I thought, well, I'm okay if I'm fired. And I just went over to her and I said, how can you possibly do that? Can you imagine the fear and terror this woman, who was a friend of her mother's, she must have experienced? And you can never point a gun at someone or pull a trigger unless you intend to kill them. This is just so not appropriate. And she was saying, well, it didn't matter because there wasn't any ammunition in the gun. And I said, I saw you pick up that weapon and you did not check to see if it was loaded or not. And so you did not know whether or not anyway,
Wow.
I fully expected the next morning to be fired. And my detail leader did approach me as I stepped onto the property the next morning. And I thought, here it comes, I'm a goner. And he said he wanted me to know that the father, was very proud of the way I handled the situation. And, it was probably the only mothering or only voice of reason this, young person had heard in a long time. But I don't want to keep going on about that. But and I don't really enjoy necessarily talking about that part of my life, because I have a long list of certifications. Someone asked me about it recently and wanted like documentation or something that I was, so here's my business card and here's my search and rescue certification. And I have, I did all kinds of interesting things. And I have a page, much to my chagrin, of being certified in about 20 different ways that you could seriously harm someone.
My goodness.
So it's not really a part of my life that I enjoy reflecting on. It might sound exciting to other people, but it's really not.
And that's important to share too, because we always have this idea of how glamorous something might be, and it's such a covered up world. So thank you so much for giving us an insight into that and sharing such a unique but relevant story in the mindset of how the super wealthy are not checked morally. Amazing, amazing. All right, so go ahead.
If you don't mind, I was protecting a 4-year-old or 5-year-old little girl, and my partner was protecting a 6-year-old little boy in Beverly Hills. And we were on Beverly Drive, and they started fighting on the sidewalk and got away from us and very quickly ran out into traffic fighting. And I had to step into traffic and hold my arms out and stop traffic while they were fighting in the street, because I wasn't allowed to pick them, wasn't allowed to touch them and get them out of the street. Does that make sense? I mean, that's how absurd.
It's pathetic, because you know that if the kid was crushed by a car, you'd be done for manslaughter. God, I hope some of those parents are watching this. You need a few lessons here in child rearing, you naughty sport parents. Bless your heart. Wow. And what nationality were these children?
Middle Eastern. They were from a Middle Eastern country.
Don't think we're knocking the Middle East. We're just sharing a couple of examples of naughty children who are from the Middle East, but we don't obviously put that on all of the super wealthy mega billionaire. Anyway, so moving on, I'm being so captivated by the horses behind you. I know that we're moving into that beautiful realm. So what else would you like to share about your life, about the way, the inspirational, the horrible, the next near-death experience, any of that and all of that you want to share that takes you to where you are in your work in this more regular day?
Well, for me, I'm passionate about sharing my journey following my last near-death experience, and the ways in which my soul guided me on my journey toward healing, toward forgiveness, toward forgiving myself, and toward seeing the value of releasing judgments and learning all of the ways I hope and pray we do things differently in the future. We raise our children in our society differently in the future. And I'm hoping that the many hundreds, if not thousands of people who are now coming forward, sharing their near-death experiences, will make an impact on our society. And we all have varied messages. Some come back and say, heaven is real. I talk to God. We don't have to worry about death. And that creates a tremendous amount of contentment and peace for some people. And that's all they need. And others come back and talk about forgiveness or illness and our energetic imbalance or our different diseases. And then people like myself, I came back after my second near-death experience, and I've also had a couple of really incredible, what are termed spiritually transformative experiences. But when I came back, all of my psychic senses were activated immediately, and I still had a connection to what people call the causal realms or sixth density. It's a theory. It's just one theory that our oversouls or the monad, some people refer to it as the monad. I'm not particularly fond of that term for specific reasons, but I had a direct connection to my oversoul after I came back from my near-death experience. All of my psychic senses were turned on, and it was quite confusing. So my journey and my message is really about how I overcame the trauma and how I began to understand where our thoughts come from, where our subconscious beliefs and patterns come from, how we, as little tiny children, little souls in human bodies, on this side of the veil of forgetfulness, take on traumas and projections and belief systems of others and begin to adopt a posture of doubt or even anger or guilt or unworthiness. And we begin to, from a young age, manage our energy in ways that greatly affects us as an adult, but we just don't realize it. And so oftentimes, all the traditional psychotherapy in the world, for some people, for some of us, and I would say especially those of us who are really here to make a quantum leap in this life and resolve a lot of karma and put a lot of things to rest, in the hopes and with the intention that we don't have to come back to the third density stream duality, polarity experience. And that's where my passion lies. And that's what I really enjoy talking about.
That's amazing. Got a couple of questions here. I don't want to skip your second near-death experience that happened in 2012. That's very important. Can you explain to people what monad is, and can you also share with us what you understand the oversoul to be?
Well, I'm not an expert in the Vedic perspective, but I can simply say that the monad is a representation of our highest, purest self when you are willing to embrace the idea that each person or soul groups have different monads. And a lot of people like to talk about the self, the higher self, and then the monad. So that is a hierarchical framework. Some people don't like that. I see things from an energetic hierarchical framework. So I don't, have a problem with that. But from the Vedic perspective, the monad is a more esoteric, non-physical, not necessarily experiencing its own incarnation experience or creation experience necessarily where it is. And again, I'm not an expert. So if there's an expert out there listening to me butcher this description, I greatly apologize. I use the term oversoul because I perceive our oversouls existing in a 6th density or above experience. I think it's safe to say, from my perspective, a good number of humans that I have met have oversouls existing anywhere from 6th density and beyond. But in the 6th density and beyond, they are having an experience also where they are creating or living lifetimes that we probably can't imagine, because we're in right now, I think, 4th density. And so that's the difference that I perceive it. And again, I'm not an expert on the Vedic perspective, but I see a lot more going on at those levels and above than I have been privy to understanding from the Vedic perspective.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your perspective, which is extremely valued, extremely valuable, and very much appreciated. And, you know, it's interesting, you know, when we are someone who has suffered such trauma, such abuse, mental, physical, emotional, don't we just, even though we've done all this healing, sometimes there's still an element of us that will still try and protect that piece of us from attack by being humble, by being genuine. And that's a beautiful example right there of what we do in the most beautiful way. But my darling, you are on this channel, and I'm going to share with people how we met. We met because you met Alex Collier, who's a very dear friend of mine, and he's someone on this planet who is, I mean, he gets so cross with me because I can't help myself, because I'm just so like, Alex Collier rocks, you know. He's just such a leader, and you know, he got us together. He brought you and I together, and he told me that you were special. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, my love. Thank you. You know, and there's so much more for us to discover about you, but it's just a beautiful illustration as we're doing this live recording together that we recognize, and I recognize as a therapist too, also somebody from traumatic past, but who hasn't, you know? And so we're all reflections of each other. We're all healing together on these different levels. And you just did something that was such a gift that I hope people do get it this minute, this last few minutes here of the reflection of inner and outer healing, you know, but you, my love, this is all about you right now. This is a platform right now for you to absolutely bring it all, bring everything about you, because you're fascinating and your information is very important.
Well, thank you. All of our experiences, I think I've never met anyone that doesn't say all of our experiences are exactly what we can handle, exactly what we need to grow on our path. So having said that, I acknowledge that all of my experiences were helping me grow or resolve karma, I would like to make the following comment. I learned more in my experience as a human by watching people do things that didn't make me feel good, that behaviors that I did not want to emulate. And from the time I had my near-death experience, people kept telling me, you're a healer, you have to go out there, you have to do this, you have to. And I thought, wait a second, let's slow down, Turbo. You know, people that I'm talking to, they've done this for 2, 3, 4 decades. I need to have more experience. And I traveled quite a bit and studied quite a bit and asked a lot of questions. And I constantly met people who felt they had all the answers and they knew exactly how the universe worked. And they had certain protocols, and no experience could fall outside of their protocols. And when I bumped into that, like a pinball, I went off in the other direction. And that happened a lot on my journey. And I want to make sure that I'm never perceived as lecturing or pointing fingers or looking down from the mountain, because that happened a lot on my journey, and not just because a wounded part of me somehow felt invalidated, because inside myself, I invalidate myself. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, you know, spiritual ego and sometimes spiritual abuse that isn't apparent to people, that some people are doing these things. And I try to share my experience, and if it resonates, great, but I'm not necessarily trying to teach about anything other than I learned how I work and how I function, and I love to talk about that, and where I found thoughts and behaviors and patterns and past life experiences. But I definitely don't want to get on a soapbox and start telling everybody they're wrong if they don't agree with me.
And this is why you're so valuable, because you are stating, like I say things all the time, like, don't follow a leader, don't follow a bloody guru. Oh my God, the savior complex. Jesus, come and save me. Hashem, Yahweh, Yehovah, Jehovah. We've got to knock that shit off. We're the people we've been waiting for. And, you know, and you having these experiences that helped you, you know, people will fit your frequency or they won't. You'll be able to reach them or you won't. But those that try, like I remember years ago, this old bag and her assistant, I really was seeking some more kind of spiritual training, and I had to do this thing. They wanted to wear me white. I had to wear white clothes and take a bath and rub salt on my clothes. And I thought, that's complete bollocks. I'm not doing it. They were furious. And I'm like, you know what? No, you bloody bullies. And one other thing I wanted to say for myself, you know, as a kind of sharing and for people watching, like, you know, me personally, this is my own personal thought that I haven't heard from somebody else, because I've no interest in that either. Like, I'm on my path, like you're very secure on yours. I'm sick and tired of hearing about fucking karma. Oh, it's your karma. Shut up. Honestly, Ginny, it drives me mad. I'm pissed at the creative energy. If I decided to come into this journey with karma, I'm going to kick myself up the ass. Okay? Right? I'm also not a sinner. Absolutely not a sinner. That is a crime to tell people they're a sinner. Oh, and the other thing, not that I am a hero, I'm not. You mentioned something, you said, you know, about some people say, God doesn't give you more than you can handle. Right. My own personal experiences, what a load of shit. What a load of, not my experience, and doesn't matter what happened. It was around the death of losing a child. And that is, yeah, there are certain things that when someone says, oh, that doesn't give you more than you can handle, shut up, you know. And I want to say that so people give themselves permission, Ginny, to just let go of, oh, life tells you this and life gives you that and we have to do this. No, we don't. And you are absolute proof of that by saying, whatever the gurus say, I'm just doing me, I'm just doing Ginny. This humbleness and kindness, Ginny, this is where we be right now. Please continue.
Well, you know, we can do yoga all day long. We can chant all day long to keep our frequency up. But the minute you stop chanting, you're just an asshole again. You know, I mean, we can do qigong and have some amazing epiphany or spiritual awakening, but we don't find where our consciousness is expressing itself in those lower chakras, and our life is still going to be a dumpster fire. And, you know, that I think I learned a lot by watching people do that. And I paid several people, at least $6,000 to spend like a week with them. And when you show up, you realize if you don't worship them, if they are not the best, greatest thing in the room, you will not get their attention. If in any way you challenge them or you question or you see beyond what they perceive, you will be attacked, invalidated, ridiculed, and invited to leave in various ways. And that's what happened to me a few times. So I try really hardly to look at each person as an individual. All journeys are different. All of our however many lifetimes and the soul lineages that we come from and the genetic lineages that we come from all make such beautiful, messy puzzle pieces of all of it, of us, and no protocol. I've never found a protocol that works for everybody. And so what I try to do is just create a space of really strong heart energy. I've been so really lucky that I had that second NDE, that my oversoul can radiate through me or assist me in generating a space where people can feel safe and their burdens can be temporarily lifted so that they can be self-aware when we are working together and learn about themselves. So to me, that's valuable.
It's amazing. So take us to the 2012 near-death experience, please. What happened to you?
Well, I was on prescription medication. I had to retire from my job because my body just gave out. And the doctors for years couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And I refused narcotic or opioid prescriptions for 7 or 8 years. And around 2009-ish, I began taking fentanyl, a fentanyl patch. And in 2012, the dosage of fentanyl that I was on was 135 micrograms per hour. And additionally taking Dilaudid. And I had just had my prescription upped on Dilaudid, which I was supposed to take at night or when I had what they call breakthrough pain, where the fentanyl wasn't quite cutting it. And I took an 8 milligram Dilaudid before I went to sleep. This was all prescription medication. And my brain forgot to tell my lungs to breathe. So if you read the package of fentanyl, it says clearly on the package in the insert, which by the way, if you unfold it, is about 4 foot by 6 foot square.
Oh my God, of information as to the dangers of fentanyl.
Tiny print.
Holy
and
shit.
It basically says, well, when I brought it home the first time, I brought home a fentanyl lollipop from the doctor, and after 7 years, he said, try this. So my husband, being the internet geek, electrical engineer, computer scientist that he is, he hopped on and Googled the medicine, and he turned around and he said, Ginny, you realize your brain can forget to tell your lungs to breathe if you take this medicine.
Wow.
And I collapsed to the floor crying, and I said, I have no other option. I'm never going to go back to work. And this is 7 years later, and I wouldn't take the narcotics because I carried a gun and I wanted to go back to work so bad. I love my job. And I just said, I have no other option. My life is over. This is it. I may as well, and just put the lollipop in my mouth. And then he didn't realize he was portending what would happen to me. And 4 years later, my brain forgot to tell my lungs to breathe.
Oh my God. Oh my God. That's just crazy. Okay, I have a huge confession. My brain forgot to tell me to plug my bloody laptop in.
Oh, okay.
I'm just going to hit pause while I grab my...
Sure.
second. This is so exciting though, girl. Seriously. Okay. A continuation with the lovely Ginny, soul, animal, and human whisperer. So Ginny, please continue this fascinating tale.
Well, I was propelled into for me, it was a white space, no ceiling, no floor. And I was me. I could think, I could reason. And I sort of looked around and I saw a man that, my consciousness created Jesus, to me, and this is the white person's version of Jesus, right? That's what apparently I needed to see in that moment.
Wow.
With a beautiful, large, deciduous tree behind him. And I thought, yep, I'm on a lot of drugs. Yep, makes sense. I'm dead. This makes total sense. But then right away, I had the most ironic thought I ever could have come up with. I mean, and I think this goes down in history. Right away, I thought, well, who's going to take care of my husband if I'm gone?
Oh my God.
And, I had been, for the most part, bedridden, didn't drive a car. He brought me 3 meals a day in bed. He ran the ranch. He took care of the animals. He did the dishes.
Oh my God.
And I'm sort of absurdly positing, well, who's going to take care of my husband, So, and I was like, oh yeah, I've had enough of this. That's enough suffering for me. And I was just about to I think I put my hand in, Jesus had his hand outstretched, or the being that looked to me like Jesus. And I put my hand in his hand and I heard a lot of commotion behind me right away. And I turned around and there were about 20 horses and 70 donkeys from a sanctuary that I had been volunteering at while I was declining toward my near death. And they were just screaming in a human voice I could hear, don't go, don't go. Don't you remember there's something important you have to do? And I just whipped back around and I said, sorry, Jesus, I'm going with them. And I mean, it just happened so fast. I didn't have a moment to consider the wisdom of that choice, because in hindsight, I don't know if I would have made that choice, because it was a really hard journey getting off of drugs and doing all this, seeker's path and all that. So I came back in my body to the most excruciating pain I ever felt in my life. My lungs were on fire because I had stopped breathing.
Oh,
and I was just hysterical, hyperventilating. My heart had stopped. So I had had some sort of heart event, some sort of stroke, a couple of minor strokes, and continued to have a few strokes over that next year. So I struggle with a lot of things like memory recall. My vocabulary is very limited. I'm very simple, and my soul
I'm sorry, I don't know the person you're talking about, because the woman on the screen is fucking genius. So can you just continue? I don't see any problem, and neither does anyone else watching this. Oh my God.
Well, when you compare yourself, to the way you used to be when you were young and had a lexicon as big as the world, but that scared the heck out of my husband because it was the middle of the night. And then, so the next morning we talked about it and I said, this makes no sense. You might think I'm crazy, but I think I have something important to do. Now, mind you, I did not contribute to society. I was bedridden. I watched HGTV and slept most of the day. So, I wasn't contributing a lot to society. So for me to say to my husband, I have something important to do, was bordering on the absurd. But he truly loved me. So he just said, I don't care what it takes. I want you to live. It doesn't matter what it takes. Go and figure this out.
Oh.
So I spent the better part, the lion's share of his life savings on my journey. And it's taken me around the world. It's taken me to many sacred sites. It's taken me all over the US, Canada. I've worked with Aboriginals in Australia. I've done a lot of really interesting things and met a lot of really phenomenal people. It took me 2 years to get off of the fentanyl. Right away, I didn't decrease. I just went back to that lower dosage prior to my near death because I didn't know how to get off of it because I was in so much pain. So it took me a couple of years to heal to the point that and get this, ding, 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 ding. Here's the one part of the show you want to watch, folks. The emotional pain that no other medication could anesthetize. When I figured that out, that's when I was able and do my own work. That's when I was able to get myself off of the fentanyl. It took about 2 years. I don't recommend doing it on your own, but it was against my doctor's advice. My doctor told me My pain management doctor told me nobody gets off of opioids. I've had maybe 2 out of thousands of patients decrease their dosage, but never get off. This is how you're going to live and eventually die. And I
Oh
said,
my
"Big lift."
God.
Oh, I speak at medical conferences about this, and I have said this many times, and this is a direct quote from my doctor. And I said, well, make a list of all the people that have survived opioids and put my name at the top, and I'll get back to you.
Oh my
right?
God.
So then when I finally did, 2 years later, 2 and a few months, I don't remember exactly. I mean, that's a very vague time in my life. I went back and I said, okay, I'm off opioids, no more prescriptions. Now, what do I do about my brain and my body? My muscles are atrophied. I can't sit up for more than 30 minutes. I want to travel and fly on a plane. And they said, and he said, and I quote, "There are no long-term studies in overcoming the effects of opioids because nobody ever lives long enough to study them."
Oh my God, Ginny.
And I said, well, and I kept talking, and he said, "What do you want from me?"
A decent doctor is the answer. My God.
A doctor who realizes that all of the people, most of the people on opioids are experiencing emotional pain. And then he left and he goes, "Everybody come here, look at Ginny. You know, everybody come here and hear this story." Well, so I've spent a considerable amount of time and effort talking to anybody that will listen to me that a lot of our pain, especially in the US, I mean, really, we consume 95% of the world's opioids, and we have 5% of the, less than 5% of the world's population. There's, I mean, if people really knew that truth.
Yeah. You know, this is another, such an important message and mission, Ginny. And again, there are people out there who say, what's my mission? What's my mission? How can I help? How can I support my human brothers and sisters? You know, missions like this, like proving that there is healing from opioids, that doctors like that, man, they're training, the programming, and it's not, some of them really believe this. They believe this, you know, and it's a friggin' lie. It's a lie. Oh my God. Okay, keep going, because my heart is thumping.
You know, it's one thing for a doctor to say to a person, you don't need pain management, you're mentally ill. I was never told that, but I've heard other people tell me that people that have, for example, trigeminal neuralgia, which is nicknamed the suicide disease, where the nervous system, the nerves in the brain, create such, are so overloaded with trauma that it creates a debilitating frequency that is just crazy making and will make you just drop to the floor in pain. And I've worked with people that have actually overcome these types of chronic, medically diagnosed, clinically diagnosed illnesses and diseases. Almost 95% of all of my clients, be they animal or human, have experienced trauma or long-term trauma or PTSD. And I'm not a psychotherapist, I'm not a therapist, I'm an intuitive. And I can see, sense, and feel the trauma in the nervous system. I can see, sense, and feel imprints in the energy field, the subtle bodies. I can see the Chinese meridians in the body, etc. So I'm able to, based on all of my experience that I've accumulated in the different classes that I've taken and the different philosophies I've been exposed to, I'm able to work with people to help them get out from under that. People that be here now, you know, Ram Dass, right, or Eckhart Tolle, or just be the light people, those people who feel a failure because that doesn't work for them. They can't just be taken on one meditation back to when they were created and then poof, everything is perfect. That works for people from certain soul lineages. It doesn't work for everybody. And well, even people from those soul lineages who have experienced extraordinary stress trauma in this life, They need more. Now, I'm not trying to limit anybody's ability to magically heal overnight. And certainly these things do happen. But more often than not, I meet people that come to me are like, I've been on a journey. I've been meditating. I've been trying this or that. I've spent 20, 30, 40,000. I'm like, look at me. I spent more than $500,000, you know, of people trying to heal me. People doing something to me, not realizing that if you take it from one place, you have to take it from everywhere. That's the beauty of our nervous system and our soul communicating through our nervous system, that our soul can communicate to every single cell, particle, atom, molecule of liquid, blood, water inside the microtubules, a quantum physics term, inside the nerve cells, the cranial and spinal fluid. Our soul every moment communicates to every single cell, trillions, 100 trillion cells. Some people say 30 to 50, 100, depends who you talk to, trillion cells in the body. Our soul and our nervous system communicates to all of them every moment. The imprints in our energy field, everything. When someone else tries to do something to you and they remove it from one place, but not anywhere else, it is, in my experience, for people such as myself who have had a lot of trauma, it is incomplete. And that's why it's one of the reasons why the energy comes back and we keep feeling like we keep healing the same things over and over and over, because somebody decided they were going to go out and get a Reiki certificate and quit their day job and put up a shingle and call themselves a healer. And it is not helpful to people. It makes people feel like a failure. In my experience, and I'm speaking to that limited audience that possibly had experiences such as mine, where our trauma is multi-layered and our powerful, infinite, amazing consciousness as a child created all kinds of energetic coping mechanisms and workarounds to manage our environment for our safety, security, and survival, not realizing when we grew up and became 30, 40, 50 years old, we don't need to continue to feel the world. And there's an entire group of people out there identifying as empath, and it's absolutely unnecessary to identify as an empath. We have 8 psychic senses. We need to be taught about those psychic senses. We need to be taught about what are the many reasons why our psychic senses are either turned on or turned off, or what we consider malfunctioning, but we made them work that way on for a reason, for a darn good reason, either in this life or a past life, and it's part of our soul blueprint. And not a lot of people can sell tickets to events if you say that it's that complicated. So when people are done wasting their money on, 15 different workshops and all of these beautiful processes and theories and new shiny baubles out there, quantum this, quantum that, feel the field, choose the timeline you want. When you're done playing around with all the shiny gadgets that don't work, that's when people such as myself come to someone like myself.
Yeah. The sad thing is that I truly know that, I would say, in my opinion, most of the people out there that are doing some kind of healing modality, they're really coming from a good place. They really are. And then something happens. Like, I saw this fool. I went to an international women's business conference in LA, like last year or the year before, before the current fuckery occurred. And they tell you, when you can fart and when you can go into a room and with other people and, not drop dead. And it was all women, and these beautiful women were there, Ginny, like women from India and Africa and in England, and they all were being awarded for loving on the humanity, like making an impact in however their field, allowed them to. And then this really hot guy, gorgeous blue-eyed blonde guy in a gorgeous suit, gets on stage, and I'm thinking, yummy. Great eye candy leaping up and down there, until he opened his mouth and he told all of these brilliant women in the room All you have to do is create a business box and you flog it for $2,000 a person. And I'm like, I'm not hearing this. I'm no, that man is not saying that. Insulting all these brilliant women. But I'm sorry, eye candy, I think you might need to stop talking right now because you're not being helpful. You're not helping the females continue to advance. You're kind of pulling them back down a cheap, nasty road. And he said, write a book or get someone to write it for you. Make a DVD, make a CD, chuck it all in a box and flog it for $2,000. And then whatever money you put into paying to speak on other people's stages, you're fine, you'll get your money back. I walked out, I'm like, I'm going out for a fag. I'm going out for a cigarette. I'm not listening to this shite. You know, this is a good example of what you're saying on multi levels. And again, going back to kindness and humbleness, but you know, the people out there healing, yeah, they've done their Reiki. They really intend to do good to help. But if they haven't worked on their own wounds, they haven't worked on their own inner child, then you know, you're going out there with one arm and no legs, aren't you, trying to be helpful? It's not helpful. It's not helpful.
Right. I mean, I went through all the Reiki training too, because I got a ton of certifications and other things. And I let go of all that because that was all protocol. It only works one way. Everything has to fall into a certain protocol. And I'm like, well, what do I say I do? So I went and got a Reiki certification, Reiki Master Level 3. It took 6 days. Nobody tested me. Nobody asked me if I was self-aware. Nobody knew if I was a chainsaw murderer or anything. It's like they handed out like candy corn on Halloween. You know, anybody can be this, and it doesn't seem ethical. Really, there are no standards in this field. But you look, there are a lot of beautiful, incredible people who were doing like I did. I thought I needed some sort of certification or what have you. But more to your point, I have so many people that call me and they've been to sort of week-long certification to be a coach or this or that, or to develop their business, business development type classes, which are very expensive, $5,000, $12,000. I mean, we're talking about programs that cost a lot of money. And they come back and they feel traumatized from the training, or they feel horrible because the people said, now, if you really want to succeed, you have to come to level 2. And that'll be another $5,000 right now. And if you wait, it'll be, $10,000. And if you don't come, they get shamed. And those types of programs, the motivation behind that is not to truly help people develop or become more self-aware, or to understand their humanness or their psyche or their energy field, and how our thoughts and emotions create our hormones and imbalance. And it's very unfortunate, I think. So.
It really is. Oh my God, there's so much to talk about. We might have to do a part 2. Like seriously, we haven't even really gotten to the animals and that healing and that recovery yet. And I guess we're just being guided to where we need to go in this first broadcast. And because I really want to talk about the 8 psychic senses, I want us to be able to deliver to some of the people watching this some tools that they can take away, that they can help themselves in their PTSD, their trauma, their spiritual understanding and awareness, or forgiving themselves for not doing this or for doing that, or, not recognizing an NDE experience that was there as a beautiful lesson, not a trauma. So what would you say in this moment would be the best thing that you could give our audience here from all of your knowledge and experience?
I would say self-inquiry would be the number one thing if I never got an opportunity to speak with anybody again. So let's say one day you wake up and you have a pain in your lower back, or your right hip, or your left knee, or your right ankle all of a sudden feels weak or throbbing, or you have a rash, or you have a cough, or you have a headache. Wherever you have that discomfort, put your hand there. And I'd like to give a few questions that people can ask as a self-inquiry. So firstly, we can do our best to ground bringing earth energy up through the chakras in our feet, life force energy down through our head, breathing techniques are very valuable. I don't recommend advanced ones right off the bat necessarily, like holotropic or Wim Hof type, but something gentle and like 4-4-4 or some breath work where you're inhaling for maybe 3 or 4 seconds and you hold it for just a moment or two and then exhale a little bit longer than the inhale. So if you're inhaling for 3 seconds, if you can exhale for 5 seconds, it tells your body there's no longer a threat present and you don't have to be in fight or flight anymore. It took much more than breath work to get me out of the perpetual fight or flight that I was in. So if anybody's trying this and it's not working, it didn't work for me either, but it can very much help you in a moment to calm down, to focus, breathing into your heart space, just to go into a mode of self-inquiry and whatever method you like to ground or become present. And breathing is a wonderful way to do that. So let's say I had a pain on my neck, and I would then place my hand here and I could ask one of, I'll try to give you 4 or 5 questions. So what is it that I was meant to learn through this experience? Who am I not forgiving? What am I resisting? How can I help myself? And the 5th one I'd like to give, and this is coming directly from my soul, where is this coming from? Does this belong to me is the intention. What my soul, where is this coming from? I think what my soul means is, does this belong to me? Yes. One of the things I learned, those of us who have been verbally abused, physically abused, sexually abused, when our abuser is attacking us, for coming into our field, violating our field, we often take on their patterns, and it could be ancestral patterns, their doubt, their anger, their rage, and it ends up in our energy system, and our body only perceives it as a foreign body, a foreign energy, and it begins to, depending on the person, it's unique for everyone. I really can't say that something very specific happens, because if it's just an emotion like anger or rage, our field generally doesn't know the difference. And so when we express, like say we go to the grocery store, we get very angry or we get very weepy, we feel sad, especially if we are empathic, and we don't know it's not ours unless we inquire. So where is this coming from is what my soul said, and I'm adding, does this belong to me? Because it's a very, very valuable tool in determining if what we're feeling even belongs to us or not. And if it does not belong to us, you can return it to whoever it belongs to in full consciousness if you're ready. Now, there will be a percentage of folks that aren't ready because they might believe they deserve to suffer, or believe that pain is a learning tool, or believe that, from a karmic perspective or something, that this was the life for them to atone for some of the mistakes of the past or what have you. Or because their parents told them when they were young that they deserved what they got, or they should be ashamed, or what have you. It's so complicated. It can be any of 600 to 800 different things, really. Yeah. But I'm trying to distill it into 4 or 5, questions that we can ask on the fly, in the grocery store, at work, and we don't have to pay somebody $150 or $500 an hour to figure it out. So if I didn't say it already, who have I not forgiven? I think I might have said that. So
you did, but that is a huge one. That is a huge one. And, when you're returning energy, I know that, we would never return the energy with rage and violence. And there's no, yes, that's not what we return. We just give, it's like me in my day to day, whatever someone sends me, I send it to them with the same frequency. If they send me love, I send them love. But if they've sent me hate, rage, and whatever it is, I don't know that. but I'm just acknowledging anything that comes to me. I return the frequency, and I'm in an unconditional neutral space, so I'm not attached to, and I would never send, I'd never consciously send rage and fire, and you know what I mean? This is so fascinating. You mentioned foot chakras today. I was working with a beautiful girl. I've met her a couple of times now, and I'm encouraging her to start her own channel, tell her own healing stories. She's from an SRA background, satanic ritual abuse, and as a lot of people have had this kind of frequency, terrible physical. And I was telling, she's not been sleeping, so I was giving her some sleeping techniques, like, okay, let's change the routine. What you've been doing isn't working right now. Let's change your routine. So, and I said, we'll get some Epsom salts, lavender, we'll sit in the bath. And then I said, at the bottom of your foot, there is a foot chakra on each foot. Every nerve ending in the body ends in the feet. That's what Egyptian reflexology is, the mapping of the feet. Just knowing that if you have a headache, rubbing your big toe is going to affect the headache, the disturbing energy that's there oscillating to get your attention about something, because our bodies talk all the time, don't they? But I was telling this beautiful girl that I imagine, for her to imagine, when she puts the Epsom salts and she does it clockwise, the salt on her foot, imagine a golden plug, very gently take that plug out. And imagine any toxic energy, any frequency energy that was stuck in the body that you weren't aware of, just draining away. Then do the other foot, and then do the hands. Epsom salts clockwise, pulling the beautiful plugs out. So it's when you said foot chakra, I'm like, yay, I already mentioned that today. It's obviously because like you, like me, I am trying to gift as much healing techniques, understanding on every level, on planet, off planet, to our brothers and sisters in this massive time of ascension. We're all graduating something, and it's just amazing.
Well, could I follow up with two things with that? One, I'd like to give a technique that might help people fall asleep. But I wanted to follow up and say that when I mentioned returning the energy, the language I used was returning it in full consciousness. Returning it in full consciousness is an indication that we are not sending it back with malice or with malintent or with anger or with a desire for someone to be punished. In full consciousness means it's basically wrapped up in a little bow with a message that says, this belongs to you and you can heal the same way I can heal. And it basically has a little note with the Ho'oponopono prayer on it, or, you too can heal this, but it's not mine to carry. So thank you for pointing that out. And I apologize if I misspoke and I didn't add that piece. For people who struggle to sleep, even people with chronic pain, I learned a technique that I would like to share. And it does work if you give it time. It may not work for everyone. And you don't have to count your breath. You're just breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth 5 times with your eyes open, and then 5 times with your eyes closed. In through the nose, out through the mouth. So please write this down. When your eyes are open, you're tapping into your conscious mind. And when your eyes are closed, you're tapping into your subconscious mind. So it doesn't matter how long you breathe or how you breathe, except that I encourage, or it is encouraged, to breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth. 5 times with your eyes open, 5 times with your eyes closed. And repeat that. 5 times with your eyes open, 5 times with your eyes closed. Usually on the first or second round, a person can fall asleep quickly. If a person has a lot of anxiety or pain, it could take 5, 6, or 7 rounds, but it is effective, and you will fall asleep and wake up and go, oh, I didn't even remember where I was in counting. So that's a very effective tool.
This is so great. You know how, us therapists or intuitives, etc., we have all this amazing, these treasures, and you're sharing so many treasures. And last week on Thanksgiving Day, I was working. I mean, I don't, you know, I'm English. I live in a different country. I don't live in America. You know, you know what I mean? Whatever. And I have an issue celebrating that massacre of my Indigenous brother and sisters anyway. But also, of course, you can turn that into being thankful, a thankful day, thankful for family, thankful for your life, etc. I get that too. But I was working that day and I got to sit with a beautiful American teen, this little girl who has the worst time sleeping. And she's at college and she's got 3 roommates and they've all got boyfriends apart from her. They're bringing their boyfriends in. I mean, they're being respectful. There's no shagging going on in the room. That would be even more traumatic, right? And I was the same as you, giving the in through the mouth, out through the nose. I was put my hand on my belly and push down because we've been breathing.
Yes.
In the last 2 years in particular, the shallow breath, when you push out through the mouth, but down into the belly, we're putting oxygen, oxygenating the blood cells. Beautiful. The guys watching this, adults with, you know, for yourselves, your children, your teenagers, the technique that Ginny just gave, the last 2 breathing techniques, if you could just like, even on your phone, like record the 1 to 2 minutes that she did and just send it to everybody. Like, yeah. Ginny, well done, darling. That was, it is so needed. You know, because if you look at breath as well, our breath, the very breath that keeps us, I mean, if we're not breathing, we're dead. It's very simple. I mean, you can be on a ventilator and have your heart being pumped and all that, but if you haven't got breath, you're dead. And of our breath, our breathing has been the single most targeted aspect of a being in the last 2 years, certainly the last 18 months. Just putting the attention back on breath and healing that, you know, and what you did was so clever, and the way you delivered it, you know, breathing in for 3 and out for 5, which informs the lack of need to be on fight or flight.
Yes.
The adrenal, like, am I gonna, Ginny, superb. Mate, we're gonna have to do a part 2.
Sure.
Because there's too much, you know what, and I think that what you've already gifted us is such a lot. Let's let people watch this and process. And then in part 2, let's talk about the 8 psychic senses, sure. Any of the other breathing healing modalities that you could, we don't want to take all your, of course, this is your living, this is your life. But, you know, we all are happy to share aspects. Of course we are. I've got videos on my channel doing the very same, you know, same thing, giving stuff away, of course. And then, you know, you and I are going to touch on a very, very sacred and important subject, which is the animals. And I would love to go more into that. And perhaps we could invite people to write to us, not in the live chat, do it in the comments section. And say, title it Dear Ginny, please, Dear Ginny, and then we'll take up those questions and we'll answer them in our next broadcast. So you could ask Ginny, what kind of questions could they ask you about helping their animals, communicating with animals, or that kind of thing?
Well, sure. I mean, sometimes animals exhibit odd behavior and it's just energy. It might be that the TV's on all day, or people are watching news all day, and maybe people aren't tending to the energetic well-being of their home. You know, putting salt or taking the crystals. A lot of people have beautiful crystals adorning their homes, but they never take the crystals outside and put them in the sun. You know, so just that alone, or a glass of water with some salt. I mean, things like that. But a lot of times, you know, animals have psychic senses too, and animals understand a lot more than we think. And oftentimes they see if our dead Aunt Betty is hanging around and visiting us, and they get a little freaked out. I think sometimes animal behavior is a little misunderstood. You know, like people will say, oh, if my dog doesn't like somebody, you know, then I don't like that person. But sometimes the dog just doesn't like the hitchhiker that the person has, or maybe that person is being abused. Maybe that person is the nicest person in the world, but they're being abused, so they're afraid. And the fear energy is triggering the animal. So I do work quite a bit differently than most animal communicators. I'm not really an animal communicator. It's too limiting. I speak with the consciousness of the body, the consciousness of the energy field, the consciousness of the soul that is present in the body, which is often traumatized. And then, of course, that higher soul, the beautiful soul, the ones who give all the beautiful messages. But unfortunately, all those beautiful messages are somewhat misleading. I think that animals can't be traumatized. And a lot of animals are on a journey to grow beyond animal consciousness and move toward human consciousness. And that means being in domestication, being in close proximity with humans, and having their own challenges and experiencing these human constructs, which get projected onto them, and all of that type of thing. So I think maybe it would be fun to have questions about odd behavior or that type of thing, but really they can pretty much ask anything if you'd like to do that.
I think that would be great. And you know, and I have to tell you, Ginny, I'm so blessed. I'm so blessed to, not only do I get to meet and I mean and know. Oh, did you hear that? I had a massive interference then. It sounded like a robot or a Dalek. Can you still hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, good. Not only am I so blessed to actually know in person off the internet, and also attract just the most incredible guests with the most amazing, excellent information that just gives so much to humanity, like truly. The people that watch the videos with the great people that I get to interview and play with, they're so beautiful. I receive so much love. And there's often like too many, I'm on the fly, I can't respond. I think if I respond to these 3, I'm going to hurt the feelings of the 10 I didn't get to. And I don't want to do that. So, you know, I tend to try and read them all, but it's impossible to answer. They're so full of love. They're so smart. They're so clever. They're so sweet. I only get like rarely the odd dickhead who's probably a paid troll, you know, that's, you know,
Yes.
to, you know, try and dim the light. But yeah, I'm so, and so guys out there, thank you for watching. Isn't she great? Hang on that way. I don't never know which way to go. So yeah, let's do a part 2. We'll talk about the 8 psychic senses, anything else that is called to your soul to share, Ginny. And if you guys out there, yeah, write your questions, start them, Dear Ginny. And if you don't do Dear Ginny, they probably won't get answered. And so we'll do, Dear Ginny, my dog is, you know, wearing my pajamas every night and smoking a pipe in the corner. I mean, whatever the behavior.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that sometimes somebody will come in someone's house, a dog will react and start barking, not because the person's not the sweetest person ever, because they have a demonic or an attachment in their field, which you call the hitchhiker. Just wanted to clarify that. So guys, go ahead and do that. Now, I do want to, you know, Ginny and I, we did speak to each other about something that is not an easy subject to talk about, but we're coming at you with the greatest love, the greatest love. And our dogs are so sensitive to everything. And there are some people who are so addicted to being ill, to being sick, to taking their medication. These people that go, my doctor said this, my doctor said that. And it's like old people talk, which shouldn't have even come into existence because of the systems we're under. It's there. Oh, my doctor this and my doctor that. And I've got to take these pills and I'm waiting for these pills and I'm waiting for this jab and this and that. So our animals, they love us. Their dogs especially, they love us, don't they? With unconditional. And sometimes they love us so much, they'll literally, you know, absorb our pain, our anguish, you know, and it's not their job. It's just not their job.
Right.
Ginny, what would you like to say on that subject?
Yes, well, I think that humans, especially, pardon me, animals who for centuries have been in domestication, have become affected by human belief systems. I mean, I had a horse once tell me he really didn't want to talk to me because he didn't believe in animal communication. And I started laughing and just about dropped the phone. And my client was an NFR rodeo champion from Texas, and she was going out on a limb to get me to help her and her horse. And her horse is telling me, well, I really don't think I can, talk to you because I don't really believe in animal communication. It's probably going to take you a long time to convince me that this is real.
My God.
Yeah, I wrote a blog about it. But so I asked the horse, why don't you believe in animal communication? And he said, well, the trainers at the barn, say it's a bunch of hooey and it's not true. And we aren't, and we horses, we aren't sentient beings, or we animals, and it's not true. So I think honoring the fact that they do have souls. And I would like to talk too, the next time we talk, about the word anthropomorphize and how the word needs to be broken out into more than one definition. Humans who, and there's a lot of us, I'm not saying that I am, but, ETs, or who, people that don't feel comfortable on Earth, I get that. People that don't like other humans, I get that. I really get that. But there are some people who are maybe take it a little too far, and who the animal in their life replaces all human contact.
Right.
That I think there's a legitimate reason to use the word anthropomorphizing, right? But when we talk about consciousness exists, and they have opinions, and they're on a soul journey, and they're healing, and they're learning, and they're growing, and they see things, and they take on belief systems and patterns, and or maybe they live in an abusive household and they're just trying to manage their environment like I did when I was a kid. And I had all these energetic coping mechanisms that I would take on all the trauma and pain and suffering of my mom to make sure I was going to get a fried bologna sandwich for dinner.
There you go.
Because if what if she didn't feed me? So I had to manage my safety, security, and survival. And some animals are doing that too, maybe not as in dramatic ways, but some are. And some just are so compassionate and loving. And some are just so innocent. I had a dog who would just astral travel anywhere, go anywhere, try to heal anybody, do all manner of things, and just so innocently, naively say, well, what's wrong with this? It's fun. I'm exploring. And no, honey, the astral realm is really contaminated with stuff that you don't want to bring home. And I woke up one morning and she wasn't in her body and didn't come back from astral traveling one night. And so I had to have a real serious talk with her soul and say, no more of this. And so my soul went over and put my soul's hand under her chin like this. And I was talking to her and I said, no more exploring, no more exploring. And her energy body, her soul body, morphed into a very regal, almost Egyptian form of a dog. So she went from that soul who was frankly self-harming, and it seemed to be to any outside person just a very happy-go-lucky, naive, sweet, go anywhere, do anything, try, I'm up for anything kind of person, who just had one drink too many and was ready to drive off the cliff. Yeah. Like that was dangerous, Wow. And every soul's experience, every animal's experience is different, or can certainly be very, very unique. So I'm not sure where I started out going in that conversation.
It is like everything we're discussing, it is everything to do with us and where we're at right now. The stories evoke so many matching frequency stories in myself and others watching. And we love our animals, those of us that do love animals so much. And we're all looking for healing techniques for ourselves. So this is like, it's just going to be like a double Christmas, I think. I also next week have my beautiful friend, Dr. Barry Sands. She's a New York, she lives in San Diego. She is an emergency room veterinary doctor. She spends 4 straight days, 12 hours every week on, the first responder in the emergency room. She's just so brilliant. And it was funny because I was so guided last week. I was saying to Spirit, okay, guys, you got me interviewing all these amazing people. I've done so many connections with people who have on and off planet connections to our brothers and sisters upstairs, you know, and then there's all these other beautiful people, scientists and healthcare people and different things I'm, you know, bringing. And then last week I heard 2 weeks ago, actually longer than that, but it was like, okay, Dani, it's time for the animals. It's time for the animals. And then in this week, like in this 7-day loop, I get to play with you and I get to play with Dr. Barry Sands. So it's going to be so fascinating that we can bring so much information to the people that will see these broadcasts. Yeah, it's very exciting. Yeah. I just want to share a quick story about my horse, Salvador, again, to highlight how just human these animals are, you know. So years and years ago, I played polo. Played for a short time because I got into it and didn't really care for. A lot of the horses love it. They do love it, but a lot of them don't. And that was a problem for me. I couldn't be around there. So anyway, but I had this horse, Salvador, and he was what we call a bright bay color in England. And then we had this other horse. I swear, this horse had the energy of an old man that smoking a cigarette, right? Couple of teeth knocked out. It's going to kick the shit out of you. His name was JD, Jack Daniels, from the Jack Daniels family. Had another beautiful white horse, Malvina. She was part Arab. And then we had Montana. Montana was a dark bay, almost black, that I got off the French racetrack. So these 4 horses, I love them so much. And they were for polo. If you play polo, you need 4 horses. These are hot bloods, thoroughbreds. Salvador, that boy, he was such a baby. He was so human. When I went to the stables, when I pulled up, if I dared to say hello to JD, Malvina, or Montana before I spoke to Salvador, he would turn his ass to my face and he would show me his bottom. And you try and push a horse through the door of a stable, you try, it's not happening. You know, and then other times if I was like mucking out on the yard, like moving hay around or whatever, if he was hungry and he was in his stable, he'd pick up his bucket and he would toss it. Be like, Dani, fill it, bitch. You know, it was just the most amazing animal, as they so are. So, you know, this nonsense that they don't feel, they don't think, they don't, of course they do, you know, of course they do. Oh, we're so lucky, we're so blessed. And Ginny, it is an honor and a blessing to meet you, and I can't wait for part 2. And guys, remember, say Dear Ginny in the comments section, not the live chat, because it disappears and I can't bloody find it. So comment section only. Ask her questions. That was mostly about animals or really any other healing techniques. And then next week we'll set a date and we'll bring her back to you. Bet you can't wait. Bet you can't wait. Ginny, let's quickly talk about the name of your ranch. I will put your details under this broadcast. Is there anything that you would like to say about the ranch? How people can look you up? And yeah, just anything to share before we meet again.
Just my website. I'm not really on social media. I just really, my clients are mostly word of mouth. And my website is heartofthehorse.us. The extension is .us. So heartofthehorse.us.
Ah, so beautiful. What a title. All right, Ginny, thank you so much. This has been such a journey. Oh my God. I'm going to have a gin and tonic after this. In a good way. In a good way. It feels like a celebration. And to you lovely people out there, lots of love. And I see you soon.